Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Means a lot to me. This year has been an incredible journey for me. I think I've always known that I was an atheist, but it was only last year that this really started to become a bigger part of my identity as a person. And it was last year that I started to read many books by atheists who were very critical towards religion. I was moved by their arguments, and I consider myself to be one of the few rationally minded people in the world, surrounded by scores of others deluded by religion. It angered me that at once the religious could claim to hold the moral high ground over atheists, while at the same time, many among them were killing and maiming in the name of their God. Atheism to me seemed like this golden light of reasonability because no one had ever killed in the name of atheism, and because atheism didn't uphold any ridiculous stories as truth. But over the course of the past several months, I've come to realize that atheism isn't good in and of itself. Now, just because it lacked some of religion's faults didn't mean it was automatically better. I've come to realize that I lost the central element that provides meaning to any idea. People. Because it is people that truly matter. And it means nothing to argue for atheism as an idea if it doesn't improve the lives of actual people. It took time for me to accept that I had been a bit presumptuous and perhaps even arrogant in defending atheism and attacking religion. And realizing that it's you, me, and everybody else that truly matters, not just our ideas about what God is what has made me a humanist first and an atheist second. And I urge you to think about just how amazing it is to be a human. I mean, against all odds, we are here. Almost nothing else in the universe lives. And of those things that do live, we humans are set apart by this amazing contraption that sits upon our shoulders that we call the brain. As Feb can tell you, the human brain might actually be the most complex thing in the entire universe. And with it, we have the power to imagine, to create, to reason, and to love. And doing all of these things is what has allowed us to live lives that are defined by more than merely surviving the night. And I've thought a lot about this amazing gift, and I thought even more about how we can make the best use of it. We're out to survive and to find comfort, just like all other life that exists. And it's not enough to merely argue for a lack of belief like I know with atheism. I've moved between many questions this year, but the one that has become most pressing to me is how we can create a world in which the greatest number of humans thrive at the highest levels possible. And unlike many, perhaps most questions, this one does not have an answer. And in fact, knowing that it cannot possibly have an answer is what makes it truly important. You see, we humans, we live in a world of perpetual change. All of the universe around us, the environment, the people, and even our own ideas are in constant flux, and we are perpetually faced with new and different problems. And as creatures that are the products of evolution, it's within our nature to want to resist this change and find that comfort wherever we can. I mean, this is what all life seems to be doing, isn't it? Adapt to its changing and chaotic environment, or else its genes just won't make it on to the next generation. I think that it's true that on some level, we're all struggling to figure out how to make sense of a very confusing life. And the frustrating part of it is that one solution to our problems rarely stays perfect forever. You know, we're prone to think of things as black and white, as either totally right or totally wrong. We like to imagine that the answers to our problems are obvious. You know, you hear people say things like, of course, abortion is wrong, and surely guns should be illegal. This sort of either-or approach to our problems has become shockingly commonplace when the simple reality is that the answer is just never so obvious. When we try to come up with remedies for our changing world, it's simply the case that there are few perfectly right solutions. But there are many better solutions, and thinking in black and white limits us from seeing these different solutions, and it limits us from seeing the potential for something different or for something better. There's one instance of this black and white, one-size-fits-all approach to our problems that has become of particular interest to me this year, and that is religion. And now, Let me be clear by saying that I think that religion can be an immense source of personal joy in one's life, and it really can be a positive source for good in the world when its believers are willing to interpret its message in a positive way. But this isn't always the case, and I think that the fundamental framework of mind that underlies religious faith is not one that makes for the greatest life for the greatest number of people. Because in religion, there more or less is one right way, and that is to say that there is one set of beliefs, practices, and ideas that are supposedly above all others, and that by having faith in these ideas, one stands to gain a reward. Now, faith may be held as a virtue by some, but I would argue for the contrary. If to mention nothing else, the fact that the rewards of religion are not of this world is a very dangerous idea. And it's worth remembering that it's impossible for every religion's idea of the afterlife to be correct. The Hindus, the Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians, they can't all have it right. And belief is such an all-encompassing notion of paradise can motivate extreme and irrational action. People are moved to do horrendous acts of violence in the name of religion all the time. And this is something that should deeply disturb us. But my concerns about religion cut much deeper than this. Because in religion, the framework of mind is one that is fundamentally resistant to the change that we know defines all of our lives. We're told we must have faith in Scripture, and that we must unthinkingly obey God, His prophets, or the figures of religious authority among us. There's little room for new perspectives or new approaches, because to question the status quo is seen as heretical. And if you do, not only could you be punished in this life, but you could be punished forever in the next. Someone like Martin Luther created a war when he dared to challenge the powers that be and give his own view on how they were doing things incorrectly. It shouldn't be like this. We must create a society in which that flame of free thinking is kindled rather than squashed by one group of people with one idea of how it all ought to be. Like I said, it's not merely enough to argue against religion. No, something has to take its place, something that can harness the potential within humans to make all of our lives better. And what I see as more promising than religion in this domain is human reason. Now, reason is a tricky concept, but I think it's defined by a few key things. I think it's a mindset in which we are very sensitive to the arrival of new evidence. I think it's a mindset in which we are willing to make arguments for our beliefs and opinions. And I think it's a mindset in which, most of all, we're willing to change our minds based on the arrival of new evidence or better arguments, even on the most fundamental of questions. The highest good in reason is a more accurate understanding of the universe and a more formidable approach towards it, rather than holding ancient scripture or illusory gods above all else. Different views are the cornerstone of a reasonable perspective because they challenge our old assumptions and they force us to rethink things. And that rethinking is what ultimately paves the way for progress. It is reason, not religion, that we have to thank for the comfort, the technology, the information, and the knowledge that is so ubiquitous today. And today, we can do something like ride around in cars because our ancestors accepted that the horse wasn't the one and only way, and that the horse didn't have to be worshipped unflinchingly like a god. And they're willing to use their reason to try and develop a different and better approach. Reason is fundamentally set apart from religion by the fact that it embraces change in the unknown instead of trying to reject it. We can accept that we don't know things and that we may not be right, but that this is okay because we have the potential to get things more right. We can accept that we don't know things and that getting things right is not the only goal. Our goal should be to find ways to tangibly improve the one life that we know we all share, this one short life, instead of clinging on to hopes that there's a better one to come. Religion, unlike reason, is fundamentally a limit on creativity because it tries to tell us that the perfect solution to all of our problems has already been found and that we can be satisfied with what we already have. But this human mind is extraordinary and it deserves no such limits. I say let us dare to believe in new ideas and new creations. Let us dare to put our faith into our fellow man who has so transformed our world. And above all, let us dare to put our faith into reason rather than God's. In doing so, I think we realize that we humans, we are our own gods, and that it is each other, not our religion, that truly makes this life worth living. All the thoughts that I put forth tonight came to me very slowly and very gradually this year. Remember that I came into this year thinking that atheism was better merely because it was atheism. I perpetrated the very black and white method of thinking that I now know to be so harmful. I'm still firmly an atheist, but this year in EMC has made this secondary to the new love and appreciation that I have for every human being, no matter his or her beliefs. Because at the end of the day, we are all humans. We're volatile, we're complicated, but more than that, we are thoughtful, and we are imaginative. Let's be bold and use the gift of reason and creativity to their fullest. And remember that we are all part of the same impossible flame of consciousness that was somehow kindled in this far-off corner of the universe. And that, I think, is a cause worth fighting for in and of itself. Thank you. Next up, we have Llewellyn. She's become a good friend of mine this year. She's been doing her project on immigration. She'll be attending the University of Maine in the fall for international relations and mathematics. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Llewellyn Searing, and the title of my project this year is A Place Where Everyone Belongs, a Home. So I would like to talk about the word our. This word evokes a certain feeling. It's the word a couple uses when they look down at their first baby and they say, "This is ours." It's the word a family uses when they buy a new house and they say, "This is our home." Our. These three little letters bring such a significant impression of community. And with a sense of community comes a sense of belonging. Because even though we exist in this humongous, people-filled world, we know that we have a place in our community. So we feel like we belong. We feel like we belong in our community. And that gives us a sense of purpose. However, within a community, there are many different groups. And these groups constantly interact with one another. They're interacting even though they have differences and divisions, but they're constantly working together. And as long as they maintain harmony, everything is fine. Our community remains happy. The trouble only occurs when our community becomes split and there becomes a divide. And there becomes an us versus a them. And those of us on the us side will never be able to talk to those who are on the them side because the divide between the two groups is that strong. Because we know that if we are on the us side and the people on the them side are there, we will never be able to form that connection with them because that divide is just too great. And this divide is what is toxic to a community, to our community, because it splits the community in half. One of the most poignant examples of this duality is immigration. This is a pretty controversial topic right now, especially given the current political climate. And I chose it this year as my project topic. And the reason I chose it is because I wanted to understand. I wanted to know what it was like. Because as someone who has their last tie to immigration was generations back, I wanted to understand what it was like to be an immigrant in modern society. And not only did I want to understand through reading news articles and videos, I wanted to understand every single step of the way. From the moment you first apply to the visa, from the moment you step on American soil, all the way to the moment where you become a citizen. And not only for those people who make it through that whole entire process, I wanted to understand the stories of those people who fell behind and couldn't make it, and weren't able to get that visa, or weren't able to actually come to America. And after doing all of this research, where I conducted school surveys, and I analyzed different articles from left-leaning sources and right-leaning sources, and I visited 8 organizations, I came to a startling conclusion that society as a whole ends up dehumanizing immigrants because we put them into a box and we put them onto one side of the equation. No longer is it our community. Now it is society, the rest of society, versus immigrants. It is us versus them. And this splits the community in two. And this process of dehumanization happens through three different arenas: words, aid organizations, and the media. So for the first arena, words. Through the use of words such as alien or illegal, society as a whole is perpetuating the divide. Because when you refer to someone as an alien, you are referring to them as someone who's not even your own species. You are saying, you are so not like me. You are so on the them side that you are not even the same species as me. You're an alien. And although that may not be what that word originally meant, over time it has come to mean that. And when you use the word illegal, illegal implies some type of drug or some type of crime or something that is unwanted by society. And that is nothing an actual person should be called. Because when you call someone illegal, you're saying that they're unwanted, that they have no benefits. But actually, one immigrant worker with an advanced STEM degree creates 2.62 new related jobs in America. And additionally, immigrants are 200% more likely to start a new business. So although society is forcing them into this illegal or this alien label, forcing them to feel like they're unwanted in society, in fact, they're very much wanted because they bring benefits. And by creating this divide in our society, we are making many people feel unwanted when in fact they should feel wanted. So the second arena that I would like to discuss is aid organizations. Now, most of the time, aid organizations feel like they're doing the right thing. They're like, we got this, we're helping people who need help, we're helping the victims. We are such good people. However, aid organizations fail to realize that most of the time, they're just isolating those who actually do need the help. Instead of saying, you are in our community and we will help you, it's, here is my community and we are going to help you. And they put all of these people into this box. And by pushing them into this box, the people in the society are pushing them further and further away from what our community is supposed to stand for. So I first became aware of this difference when I read an article in the Washington Post, and it was the story of a woman named Rosa. Rosa is an undocumented immigrant in America, and as everyone knows, ICE officials are ramping up their arrests. So she decided that the best thing to do would be to take sanctuary in a church, because ICE officials are not allowed to arrest people in churches. So she went into this church, and she applied, and the church took a vote and said, we are so happy to do this for you. We're like so excited, we got this, we took a vote, we're gonna be good people, we're gonna make the news, this is awesome. And she's like, yes, this is safe for me. So she gets a room in the church, and for the first week, it's okay. She's happy. But then as weeks drag on into months, and months drag on into years, she's still in that room in the church. And every single aspect of her day is planned out for her. She has yoga sessions at 12, tamale making sessions at 2. She has a group counseling session at 4. But at no point did anyone ever ask her, are you okay? How do you feel? What do you miss? Do you feel lonely? So she began to feel, as you see in the quote, like a bear of the zoo. She began to feel like a zoo animal in a cage for the whole entire community just to observe. She was glad that the community was helping her, but at the same time, all of the efforts of the community and the aid they were giving her just made her feel more and more isolated because they never made that personal connection with her. All they did was with good intentions, but most of their intentions were slightly superficial. So that brings me to my third aspect, media. The media tends to make most statistics very easy for us to comprehend. Because when you see a number up there like 3,000 people, you're like, okay, 3,000 people. That's like twice the number of people in Guilderland, but you don't really know everyone in Guilderland. So you're like, okay, if I want to truly understand the significance of 3,000 people, I need to be able to understand that each one of those people is a person and has a life and has memories. So I say, okay, let's say I have 10 friends. 10 friends, and then multiply that times 300. And maybe then I'll be able to comprehend how many people are affected when you say 3,000 people. Because although the media does this for the ease of the public, because the public, they don't have time to delve into the stories of every single person up there. They only have time to flash a simple statistic. But what we're missing is that every single one of those people has a story. One of those people might be a mother, might be a father, might be a son, a brother, a sibling, a sister, an aunt, a cousin. Every single one of those people that is in that 3,000 is a person and has memories and is an actual human life. And through the media just using statistics and numbers, we are dehumanizing. Society as a whole is dehumanizing the people that they're talking about, because then the rest of society, the public, only sees those people as numbers. They don't see the relationships behind those numbers. So I said I visited some 8 organizations when I first started my speech. And out of all of them, I found that one of them kind of hit the nail on the head. The reason why those 3 arenas end up dehumanizing is because they fail to make personal connections. And those personal connections are what lead to more empathy, are what lead to stronger connections at a higher level, and would eventually lead to someone including someone else in their community. For example, if I met someone who I thought was very different than me, and if I only talked to them for 30 seconds, I'd be like, okay, I don't really know you, I can't really form any connection with you. But if I talked to them for an hour, if I knew them for a year, then I could discover, oh, she's an older sister like I am. She likes mathematics like I do. And I could start forming all of these connections. And it is at that point where you form those connections that you're truly able to develop empathy for the other person. And one of the local organizations, UNHCR, that local branch in Albany, always succeeds in doing this. They don't partner up, they don't rotate through volunteers with the family. They partner up a volunteer with the family, and they make sure that those 2 groups get to really know each other. Because that way, they're able to establish those connections. They're not just brushing by and having the volunteers occasionally meet the family, but they're having that volunteer and that family together for years. And when that volunteer and that family actually get to talk, that is where they feel like I can include the other person or the other family in my community. It's no longer the us versus them divide when you feel like you actually have a connection with the other person. So in total, we need to be able to own our community. We need to be able to reach across that divide and say, I have a connection with you. Because it is only at that point where you make that connection where you see that the other person is human like you. Where you see that that is another person with memories and a life like mine. Where you no longer see them as, you no longer view them by their status, by the color of their skin, by their ethnicity, by their level of poverty, or by anything else, but you view them as part of your own community. Thank you. Okay, so coming up next is my dear friend and beloved January Day partner, Tima Iqbal. Woo! And she is going to Northeastern University and is studying computer science and business.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I'd like to make another mic check. How's my hair? Good? All right, okay. So speaking of vapidness, Instagram. So who here has an Instagram? I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. Who here has an Instagram? Yeah? Raise those hands. Yeah, woo, technology. All right, here's the thing about Instagram. I hated it. Here's why I hated it. The Instagram that I remember is from 6th grade or so, and it's the Instagram of 2011, where girls like her were the most popular girls on that platform. And a platform dedicated to vanity and beauty and not having people that look like me didn't really encourage me to join the website or the app. So I ignored it. I ignored it for a while. But the thing about it is that I didn't ignore it just because I didn't see anybody like me. I was also just afraid. I was afraid of not fitting in, of not people making fun of me because, I don't know, they didn't look like me. And this fear really translates into a lot of different things. I've seen this trend in my project that I've been doing this year on the decline of women in computer science. So you can see that as society progressed, you would assume that like every single major in every single school would have an increase in women. But computer science actually had a decline. And I've been wondering why that was. So I decided to ask our school, why aren't you taking CS courses? So these are the options: being unaware of them, no interest, feeling inadequacy, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I got. So the number one, almost 50%, chose no interest in computer science and technology. All right, we'll delve into that a little later. But then the rest of them, the other half, was all about fears. Fears of not fitting in, inadequacy. It's kind of like how I felt with Instagram. I realized that this thing about perceptions really continues because computer science companies have been advocating diversity for the past few years. So why do people still perceive computer science this way? And it's because of these guys. We don't know anybody else, really, in computer science and mainstream media. We know Steve Jobs, we know Bill Gates, and that's about it. And they don't look like most of the population anymore. It's just a fact. They don't look like our school anymore. And if these are the pioneers, if these are the faces of computer science, I wouldn't be surprised why girls who look like me aren't going into computer science. Nobody knows Ada Lovelace or Dorothy Vaughan or even Marissa Mayer. Perception is very important to our society. Perception changes our demographics. It changes how we view other people. It changes how we view fields. And a field like computer science, where they need more people every single day, they need women. But here's the thing. Trying new things, not super great. Sometimes it can work out really well, and sometimes it can kind of be iffy. So I tried EMC this year, and not super great. So one of the main things we had to do was keep journals. And as you can see, I stopped doing that about December 15th. And if anybody's good at math, that's a very long time ago. So not super good at that. So I had to figure out, what can I do? What can I do to make a place for myself? And instead of trying to continue with the journals that I wasn't really having fun with, I chose to instead talk to people, talk to kids specifically, because I'm not very good at big words, but I'm good at talking to kids. So I went to elementary schools to kind of change their perceptions early of computer science, to show them somebody like me, somebody who is actually a real face in computer science. I'll be majoring in computer science and business next year. I will be in this field. And I tried to teach them how to code video games using graphic user interface and JavaScript. And they got it, and they got it really quick. Girls especially who were never even considering this were more excited than ever. And they were teaching other kids how to code. What does this mean? This means that we can change perceptions. I still had that same perception about the 2011 Instagram for a while. But those can be changed, especially if you start early with education and letting them try new things. That's what's important, at least letting them try. Here's the thing. I was very confused about where I was going this entire, I want to say, lifetime. So, this year I actually finally realized what I want to do and where I'm going to go. I just knew that I was good at computer science, and I just knew that I was good at physics, so that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to do research because that's what I assumed that I was good at. Turns out, as you can see by my journals, not super great. But you know what I really like doing? Talking to people. So I chose to actually change my major to computer science and business, and I've never been happier in my entire life because I'm excited to do new small projects and talk to people and go out and go to different places, et cetera, just new opportunities, and learn new things about them and myself. And I have the same message for you guys. Try to learn new things. Listen. It'll be coming up. Listen. My perception of Instagram actually changed recently because I realized the same perceptions that I was holding against Instagram were very similar to the ones that girls were holding against computer science. So I realized that I was being a hypocrite. So I actually made an Instagram a few months ago, and I met a lot of cool people that I'm actually going to be spending the next 4 years of my life with. So if you guys want to follow me on Instagram. Thank you. Now, I'd like to introduce my favorite skinny legend, Michaela Jaromanic, who's going to Johnson & Wales for Public Health and Environmental Sustainability. That's a mouthful.
Thank you. Thanks. I hope this mic is on. Okay. So, good evening. I'm Michaela Jaromanic, and this year for EMC, I studied ethical consumerism and how we can make that accessible for everyone of all socioeconomic backgrounds. So, before I do that, I want to delve into the story of how I learned how to play guitar. So growing up with two parents who were avid musicians in my own home, I always kind of had an interest in the instrument myself. So it was no surprise to anyone when I wanted to learn how to play guitar. And I thought the same talent that my dad and my mom had would come easily to me. It's kind of like when you see a heavily tattooed pregnant woman and you expect the baby to come out with at least half a sleeve. But it didn't work out that way. So practicing guitar took a lot of time and a lot of pain. So hand cramps, calluses, sprained wrists. But all of these things became developments into this part of me that's ingrained in who I am. So learning how to play songs didn't always go right the first time, but eventually in a few months I went from my own basement and my own bedroom to playing gigs in downtown Albany with kids who were light years ahead of me experience-wise. So how does any of that relate to ethics? Well, the entire journey of ethical consumerism is not really best achieved by changing your entire lifestyle overnight. Massive goals like that, like learning how to play guitar, like anything in your life that you've tried to achieve, are sometimes achieved best by taking the smallest steps. So we can't expect people who are financially struggling, like college students, like we're all about to be next fall, or low-income families to start buying fair trade and organic and shop at Whole Foods. That's just not an accessible, attainable goal for everybody. But by doing small things that add up, like switching to reusable grocery bags or using a reusable water bottle, these are all things that can be done over time with a duration by day, by week, by month. And over time, these things that are better for the environment, better for the causes that you support, that align with your morals, they can wind up saving you money. And I like to save money. So that led to my final project for EMC, which is my conscious budget guide. And it's called No Harm Done. It's for the conscious consumer on a budget. And in this guide are 3 questions. And this is how I developed my own moral code formula, because it's not fair to say that everyone's going to have the same environmental concerns or the same concerns about animals. You have to make it accessible for everyone. So, the first question, does buying this have a negative impact on my cause? So everyone's got a cause, whether it's the environment, animals, people. So for this one, I think of SeaWorld. If you really like whales, you don't want to financially support a company that's going to keep them in captivity. So naturally, you're not going to go to SeaWorld. So you have the power to vote with your dollar. And every time you buy something, you should just ask yourself, am I casting my vote for the kind of world that I want to live in? Is my dollar causing me grief? Is it causing my cause to suffer? And the second question, does prolonged use of this have a negative impact on my cause? So as Tima mentioned, I'm again a minor in environmental sustainability. And because environmental causes are near and dear to my heart, I'll just use that as an example. So when I think of this question, I think of single-use plastic water bottles. And I know that they're convenient in, a time stretch, soccer moms of the world unite, but they're not the best for the environment. So say a plastic water bottle costs about $1, and a reusable stainless steel one from Target is about $7.99. Well, by buying that one that may be, more expensive on, instant, but it'll pay for itself in about a week in the time that those single-use plastic water bottles would add up. And that reusable one can be reused, which is the key, and it contributes less waste to the environment. So prolonged use of that does not have a negative impact on my cause. And you can apply that to most things in your life. And my third question, can this be disposed of without a negative impact on my cause? So ideally, most of the things in your life are going to be zero waste. These are things that consider an apple. You can eat the apple. You can plant the seeds. The rest of it's biodegradable. It doesn't leave any trace behind. But that's not always possible, because as consumers, we have things like plastic, cardboard, all these things, packaging, sometimes excessive packaging, but they're ingrained in our lives as consumers. So ideally, we can start to look for things that are biodegradable. We can start to make more things biodegradable, make them accessible, make them less expensive. So ideally, you'll start to build yourself an inventory of things that can be disposed of in a way that don't negatively impact your cause. So how does any of that tie back to guitar and ethics? Well, both of these journeys were not something that's there's no real end goal for me. It's just a general direction that I keep myself on. It's like a path. And these things they're not achieved overnight. I didn't go vegan overnight. I didn't stop using plastic overnight. I still use plastic sometimes, and even though it sounds hypocritical, I'm working on getting better at it. And that's what all of us can do. We can take those small steps by day, by week, by month, whatever our budget allows. These are things that can add up over time. And that's really what it's all about. We have these massive goals, and we want to achieve them. We want to go to college. We want to pay off those debt. Well, you have to just take it day by day. So these are things that over time, you can achieve those massive goals in those small, small steps. So I'll leave you with this. It's not about the speed that you walk the path on or how high-tech or expensive the gear you walk it with is. It's just about staying on that path. Thank you. So next, I want to introduce one of our longtime EMCers, Fibronia Mansour. She's a near and dear friend of mine, and she'll be attending Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Science this year to study biology.
Thank you, Michaela. So before I begin, I just want to recognize some people who have really helped me throughout this year. So I wrote a thesis this year, and people on my committee consisted of a couple scientists from Albany Medical Center, so Dr. Kenneth Norman, Jocelyn LeBoy, and I also had some of the people from this school on my committee. I had Mr. Fincel, Mr. Lutzik, and Mrs. Martin. So I really appreciate all your help throughout the year and in writing that paper. I also want to thank this program and the coordinators, Mr. Ba, Mrs. Gergen, and Ben. As Michaela was saying, I've been in this program for the past 3 years, and I can tell you that it has impacted me a lot, and I really don't know what I'm going to do after tonight is over. And also thank you to my classmates. They've really inspired me throughout the year. They've given me a cause worth fighting for throughout this whole 9 months of research and questioning, and probably some of the hardest work that we've all done. So please, a big round of applause for all of these people. So, throughout tonight's symposium, we've all questioned and explored by means of each student's words. We've evaluated education with Jonah, and we've been urged to consider how our surroundings affect our personalities by Tanya. Julia guided us through the ever-changing path of self-discovery, and we grasped a better understanding of our memories and experiences with Silma. We challenged our fears with Vade. We were brought to genuine laughter with, not at, Noah. Afterwards, at Alex's prodding, you ventured inside yourselves and wondered about the currents of change. Then, by Llewellyn's insistence, you took a long look at the way words classify people and why that's not all there is to an entire human being. Beyond such, Tima brought to light our individuality. We're not all the same, and that's not a bad thing. And finally, through Michaela's words, we realized that because we are individuals, we can each bring about a better world through a unique set of actions. Every student brought to this stage by a demanding year, in some cases two, of research, diligence, and the strongest of perseverance has given us a sample of themselves. We've not only understood what each project is about, but also how each person changed, the lessons they learned, and the incredible progress they've made. To be honest, preparing this speech for tonight was probably one of the most daunting tasks I've been given. Saying goodbye to this community of thinkers, these passionate people, and this monumental class is truly unthinkable, even though the time has most certainly come. The first question I asked was, what sample of myself do I want to share with all of you? This was a little difficult to answer because while my classmates were off exploring these wonderful things about human beings, I was in a lab looking through a microscope and exploring things about a species of worms called C. elegans. I chose to focus my efforts upon a specific type of cell in the nervous system called glial cells. These cells play an important role in the worm's immune defenses, and I studied their morphology in the hopes that I could better understand the pathways of neurodegeneration. And while I could have planned to stand here and talk to you about my dearest worm friends and this beloved experiment until I turned blue in the face, something told me I should close the evening with ideas that perhaps offered a little more conjecture and application in the life of a human being. And thus ensued my frantic process of trying to dress these nematodes in a human costume and hoping no one noticed the difference. Although C. elegans are small and transparent, and the microscope certainly hurt my eyes after a while, peering through an almost literal window of the microscopic world taught me quite a bit about our own world, the human-sized one. In the realm of biological research, we don't simply use C. elegans to write textbooks about the phylum Nematoda. That would be far too boring. We use C. elegans, known as model systems, among other smaller organisms, to give us hints and clues about how larger versions of life operate. And it's true, I was only half joking earlier. For some time this year, I really struggled with the perceived lack of humanity and importance that appear on the surface of C. elegans research. But the reality is that we do, and we really should notice the difference between a worm and a human being. At the same time, though, that simplicity shouldn't blind us from finding value in things that are small. At the end of the day, some parts of the reality that we live in are too complex, almost too real, and we can't always grasp a complete understanding of them. And I know I shouldn't place upon you guys my own practice of ignoring problems and hoping they solve themselves. I think there's some true weight to taking a step back and pulling things apart, descending to the fundamental roots of the problem and understanding it from a simpler perspective. For the past 2 years, the problem I chose to study was Alzheimer's disease. Initially, I spent a lot of time learning about the wonders of the brain and the most dazzling of processes occurring right inside our heads, most of which I couldn't even begin to fathom because I was continually in awe. Even learning about the most basic communication between two singular neurons left my mouth agape and my heart aflutter. But then I learned about Alzheimer's disease and the startling manner by which a human brain can degenerate into nothing. People's memories, their personalities, their lives are snatched away from them. And the world of science, the most brilliant researchers, the billions of dollars in funding, still don't know why. It seemed, at least at this point, that neuroscience had failed me, that there was no hope, because maybe the brain isn't all it's cracked up to be. But this notion that all hope is lost, although it may cross our minds every now and then, should never get the last word. Whether you are comforted by faith, by family and friends, or even by a pint of ice cream, I think we can all speak to the idea that although hope does not solve everything, can't bring back dead neurons or lost memories, it can give us the courage to move forward. Because hope is not so concerned with the reality of a terrible now, but one of a better future. And so tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a source of hope that, although transparent and microscopic, has truly brought to life the saying, "Not all heroes wear capes." Although you may have never heard of them until tonight, C. elegans have never ceased to move our knowledge of human biology forward. Now, as I continue to share, just as my classmates did, a sample of myself, a part that grew to find value in the small, I invite you to consider the following. At their core, C. elegans, other model systems, an architectural prototype, are they all not samplings of the real thing? Are they all not samplings with limitations? The truth is they are, but they're also samplings with possibilities of discovery and curiosity that far outweigh the reality they distill. At this point in time, in 2018, science has attained heights that were truly unimaginable just 5 short years ago. But even the most naive of us cannot confidently say we have achieved all that is out there. Even science, believe it or not, with those endless databases and the heavy textbooks, is nothing more than a mere sampling of knowledge. I don't mean to belittle any monumental innovations or groundbreaking discoveries, but I sincerely hope to share with you perhaps one of the most important lessons I've taken away from this year. That lesson is not solely one of hope or worms or model systems, but one of patience, an understanding that even the biggest breakthroughs started somewhere. There was a time throughout my neuroscience journey when I wanted nothing more than to achieve something big, to solve this absolutely infuriating problem of Alzheimer's disease once and for all. But that was largely impractical because my understanding, my sample perspective was and still is limited. It is confined by things like time, age, brain power, and most importantly, there are not nearly enough tubs of ice cream in this world. In my strife to find purpose then, I kind of saw myself taking the opposite extreme for a bit. After realizing this path of research and questioning to be more arduous than words can describe and more long-winded than it appears, I was quick to become undone. I understood enough to know that my contribution, much like my microscopic worms, was small and probably invisible. I struggled to find my place and fill it with purposeful passion because I couldn't quite see where I fit into the picture. And although this problem did not end in a serendipitous breakthrough anyway, I kept my glowing worms close by. I looked to the light. It was in the process of doing so that I realized I'm not wrong because we are small. When you consider the 7.6 billion people out there, the grand scheme of things, I, as one human being, am truly nothing more than a speck of dust. But that does not and should never mean I can't make my speck of dust shine bright. Our role, our position, and our legacy is what we make of it. It is not simply by definition of size or prescribed significance that we impact people. Rather, as we build our lives, choosing to act this way or that, we build our influence. Take, for example, C. elegans. Without intentional use, they're just dumb worms that live in rotting soil. But look at them now. Even in my simple experiment conducted by a mere high schooler from Smallbany, New York, they are working to stop the devastation of Alzheimer's disease. I challenge you. Take a look at that and tell me that entire human beings made of miraculous cells and organs and tissues with these grand abilities to think, discover, and invent have less significance than a microscopic worm. Well, the disappointing truth is that C. elegans alone won't be able to cure Alzheimer's disease, and even the most amazing parts of science won't be enough to solve all the problems in society. Never forget that hope exists and hope persists. And so if you have nothing else to grab a hold of in this world, let that fact, that presence of hope warm your heart. Thank you. Thank you. Now, before we let you all go, I want to invite my EMC classmates back up to the stage. So a couple weeks ago, while I was preparing for this speech, in a moment of frustration, I kind of threatened the coordinators, and I told them I'm going to go completely off script, and I'm just going to go off on a tangent about worms, and nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. And that's kind of what I'm going to do now, because the three people who are coming up to the stage right there have been the biggest and best sources of empowerment and encouragement that you guys could even imagine. So if I can find it, on behalf of the EMC class of 2018, we have these flowers and cards to recognize all of your efforts and all of the immense work that you have done for us. Thank you so much. Thank you. There's a card there. So
Thank you, Fabronia. But we're not going to let you go. So this is our third year, and we have not known a year of EMC without Fabronia. And she embodies EMC. Oftentimes we joke about trying to get her a brain. She is EMC from head to toe. She started studying feet, actually, so from toe to head. But as she worked her way up to the brain, it led to some very strange Google searches trying to get a human brain. But a 3D printer did the job. And on behalf of all of us here, this is an award for you, Fabronia Mansour. It is the Fabronia Mansour Award that anybody taking EMC is eligible to get, because you just rocked it, kid. Well done. EMC 2018, folks. Thank you so much. Drive safe.